Welcome to the Up Arrow Podcast with William Harris, featuring top business leaders sharing strategies and resources to get to the next level. Now, let's get started with the show.
Hey everyone, I'm William Harris. I'm the founder and CEO of Element and the host of the Up Arrow Podcast, where I feature the best minds in e-commerce to help you scale from 10 million to 100 million and beyond as you up arrow your business and your personal life. Joining me today is Matt Van Swol. Matt is the head of subscription growth at Wyze. He was formerly a nuclear scientist for the Department of Energy and a photographer for Apple. He is married to Erin Durham, a documentary filmmaker and a dad of 3 kids, as you can tell by his hat. Matt is passionate about marketing, science, and tech, and by his own admission, will easily talk your ear off about unique ways to save money on random stuff. Matt, I'm excited to have you here, man.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I was thinking about how we got to know each other, and it really started on Twitter, which I will forever call Twitter. I know it's X, but I don't know. Bad habits break hard.
It'll never stick for me. Yeah.
No, but the thing that really connected us was more recently, and we've engaged on each other's stuff over time. But there is some really interesting coverage over the Robovan or the Robovan, and how that was being covered on Twitter, and like some people were just saying such negative things. We're like, this is some of the most incredible stuff. Like in one week we had Tesla grabbing little chopstick hands for this rocket. Yeah. Incredible stuff. And there was some negative press about it. And you're just like, how could we be so sad about innovation taking place right now?
And about such cool products, it's like, you don't really see people launching really cool hardware as much as you used to, and it's like, right. Why be such a Debbie Downer when someone's doing something interesting in the hardware space? Like we need to make engineering way more, attractive to people going into school these days. So yeah, it just bummed me out, but yeah, Robovan's awesome. I can't wait for it.
Yeah. However you pronounce it. I do want to announce our sponsor before we do. We're chatting about how Matt's insatiable appetite for customer feedback unlocked almost 9 figures in growth here. But like I said, I want to announce our sponsor before we jump right into that. This episode is brought to you by Element. Element is an award-winning advertising agency optimizing e-commerce campaigns around profit. In fact, we've helped 13 of our customers get acquired, with the largest one selling for nearly $800 million, and one that IPO'd recently. You can learn more on our website at element.com, which is spelled ELUMYNT.com. Okay, now, unlocking 9 figures of growth by listening to your customers. Wait, what? How?
It just kind of builds the flywheel on itself. Everyone, I think overcomplicates any subscription that they're building. You kind of get just stuck in the weeds when you're building something, and you see other people building stuff that's cool, and you're like, ooh, maybe I should copy what they're building and add a little bit of flair into something I saw in the AI space into my thing. And it's like, no. Like what you really need to do is go ask your customers what they want, right? If you ask your customers what they want, they will tell you. They're very vocal. Yeah. They're paying for it, right? So at Wyze, I started out in the hardware marketing space, which I still have a love for. Maybe I'll still do that one day. But I knew that eventually I would never be able to do hardware marketing again. Like SaaS was taking over. And I knew like I had to very quickly transition into software marketing if I was going to have a job in the future. So my boss tapped me. He was like, "Hey, we need someone on the we call it the services team at Wyze." And I was like, "Oh, I don't want to do it. It's not as fun, because I love like taking, I was a photographer, so I took photos, created like unique videos and stuff. You can't do that with SaaS. You have to be a lot more creative, do animations and stuff like that. So I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to do this, but I, want to have a job in the future, so I better learn how. So I went over to the team, and I realized that we were kind of stuck in like what I would call like a growth hacking mindset, which is you take a look at every little piece of the customer interaction with the product and you think, what can I do to move this like 1 millimeter forward to get them to convert just a little bit more? Like, can we add like a new photo here or a new graphic here to like, speak more? And I think there's a place for that. Like growth hacking is not a bad thing. It's only bad if it's the only thing you do. Right. So I came in and I was like, guys, look, we really need to start launching some new features, you know? And thankfully, Wyze has like a very cool thing called our Wyze Forum. And in that
Mm.
forum, I don't know who built this, this was before my time, but it's been there for at least 5 years, where they rank the things they want Wyze to do. And I would encourage like every company to build one of these. It's very cool.
They
But it's
rank them?
essentially like,
Wait.
yeah,
How are
like
they ranking
Reddit,
them?
like it's like a Reddit thread. You know how
Oh,
you like
yeah, yeah,
upvote
yeah.
things? Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
So you just go on, you create an account with your Wise account, and you can go on, and
Hmm.
anyone can say anything. It's kind of moderated by the users themselves. And you can go and say, like, look, I really wish we had this feature or this product, or you do this particular thing with your business. And then everyone gets to vote on whether they think this is important or not. And so what we have is like a perfectly ranked list of like all of the things customers have
Brilliant.
been asking for. And some of them are hardware. You know, we've been asked by customers to launch a dash cam for years. I don't know why, but you know, they've asked for it, so hopefully
Yep.
we'll build one in the future. But in that list is all of the software stuff, and I was like, let's start here and let's start building these things. So I have this flywheel I always talk about during presentations. When anyone at leadership at Wise asks me to do a presentation, I start with the flywheel. And you're like, oh, what's your marketing strategy for the services team? I'm like, it's extremely simple. It's listen to customers, ask what they want, tell them you built it, repeat. You just do that
Yep.
over and over and over again. And eventually you will have a lot of revenue because you're building things people want. The tricky
Yeah.
part is the pricing and how you want to tier those. But if you just do that, you will have a very successful SaaS business for sure. And
Mm-hmm.
that's how we did it at Wise. And you know, it's different for Wise because we have both hardware and software, and you can't have the software without the hardware. So there's some nuance
Hmm.
there as far as like what are the things that you can build that affect the entire ecosystem as a whole versus like, you know, can I build this one little feature for this one particular camera? So you kind of have to pick and choose the winners on that,
Hmm.
but that's
Hmm.
essentially how we did it at Wise.
So
Yeah.
give me some examples. What are some things that customers asked for that you were like, okay, great, we're going to go ahead and do this, and this is going to unlock millions of dollars of growth
100%.
for us?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So the biggest one for us was the unlimited plan. So
Mm.
if you could see it in the forum. So Wise, before I came on, had a very easy time projecting revenue for services because we only had a subscription where you would attach one subscription product to one camera. And we even had tiered subscription products. So you know, one was, let's
Mhm.
just say, 4.99 a month, and it came with a professional agent that would watch your camera 24/7. Whereas the cheaper one would be like no professional agent, but it's got cool AI features, right? And you could
Mhm.
choose to like attach those things to your camera. But if you went and looked through the data of like what the number of cameras people were attaching to subscriptions, it was always one or two cameras that were attached, regardless of how many they had. They could have 100, but if you looked, the average was like one or two. And so if you talk to customers, you're like, well, why are you doing this? Are your other cameras not as important? And some of them are like, no, we just want to attach this subscription to the most important camera because we
Mhm.
hate buying more than one subscription. And I always say, like, if there's anything you want to ask someone, like, what do you hate like more than subscriptions? They will say two subscriptions, right?
Yeah.
So looking at the data, we were like, oh, okay, so people just hate multiple subscriptions. But I
Yeah.
wonder if we just said unlimited and had them pay one larger fee for unlimited cameras.
Mhm.
You know, a lot of people do this. They did this with data with like T-Mobile back in the day. Um,
Mhm.
if they would pay, it was essentially 5 times as much. So we had a $1.99 a month plan, and then we priced unlimited at $10, right? Which would be the equivalent of having five cameras. I will tell you, like, zero people were paying for five
Sure.
subscriptions. Yeah, like no one. Um, but when we launched the unlimited plan, we had hundreds of thousands of
Mhm.
people sign up to that plan within a couple of
Brilliant.
months. right? And now it's our fastest growing plan by a lot, right? Because what we want is people to have a lot of cameras. That's what we
Mhm.
want. We want you to dive deep into the ecosystem. Put a camera in your kid's room, on the front door, on a floodlight. Go crazy. We don't want to penalize you with subscriptions
Mhm.
for loving us, right? So,
Yep.
so this was like one of the biggest ones that we did. We've done a couple other really cool ones. Facial recognition was a big one, and is
Well, I
one of
want to
my
touch on this
personal
one before you jump
favorites.
on facial recognition,
Yeah,
because I
yeah,
there's a couple of things that I like about this. One, like you said, you don't ever want to penalize your customers for using your product. You want them to use
no,
as much of your product as possible.
that's
You
right.
That's where they find the most value out of it. And so you're like, great, how do I make sure that you get as much value as possible out of this? That's good. The other thing that I like about this is it reminds me of, let's just say, upgrading to a meal at McDonald's, or
Mm,
whatever, right? Like you go back to when they first started this, and I don't know the story there, but there's probably a good story there that exists in some marketing textbook somewhere. But it's like, okay, you try to get somebody to say, hey, do you want fries with that? And it's like, okay, that helps. Well, do you also want to drink? And it's like, well, now I'm getting three things instead of one thing. But it's like, if you could say, well, or you could get the meal. Now it's just one thing. I'm just getting one thing at
mm,
McDonald's.
that's
And I
true.
like that subtlety there.
The meal. Yeah, totally. That's a really good analogy. Yeah, I'm a sucker for McDonald's, by the way. My-
That's right. I
I have
forgot
such
about that
terrible eating
actually.
habits.
Wait,
Yeah,
so the first
yeah.
time I have to tell people that the first time when you and I met face to face on the camera here, your
Yeah,
wife
yeah.
had brought you, I think, I don't know if it was Wendy's or something, but she had brought it and he's like, you had us sitting there
Yeah,
for like the next 10 minutes as we finished
I
up our
did.
call. And I could just see you just salivating, like, I need to eat
Oh
this
man,
now.
I couldn't wait to eat it. Yeah, yeah, it was great.
uh,
Yeah, we could get into my terrible eating habits later. It was actually like an E.
yeah.
coli outbreak at McDonald's. But anyways,
Yeah.
where were
So
we talking about? Oh, facial
AI
recognition.
was the
Yeah,
other
yeah,
one.
yeah.
Yes, facial recognition.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. Facial recognition, I think, is the goat of one of the goats of camera features. The reason being, most let's just take Ring for example, like the very popular doorbell cam. Ring will tell you like there's a person at your door. We will too. And you're like, okay, cool. And then it might give you a bit more information, like, person with packages at the door. And you're like, oh,
Hmm.
that's
Hmm.
probably a delivery guy, you know? And you can kind of piece together based on the AI detections, like what's going on at the door. But the chasm between person with package at the door and what could be going on is very large, right? Um,
Hmm.
so for facial recognition, the difference between generic person detected and my wife detected at the door, huge
Ooh.
chasm, right?
Yeah.
And what we also implemented at Wise is unknown person. So you can have a catalog or a library of all of the people that ever come to your front door, and you just say, that's this person, you name them all, right? So when an unknown person shows up at the door, you know it's no one that you have tagged before, right? And now
Hmm.
you're like,
Hmm.
ooh, okay, I might need to get off the Zoom call and see who's at the door, right? Because
That's
a lot of people
very
have like the
interesting.
same mailman come to the door, right? So I just like name
Totally.
him like mailman, UPS guy, right? You can
Hmm.
name like anyone that comes to your door. So I really think that and one of the beauties of that feature too, that people might think is cool, is it requires effort on the customer part. So you have to go in and name all of the people that show up at your door. You've done that work. So the likelihood that you're just gonna like unsubscribe and let all that work that
Sure.
you've done go is very low, right? So any
Hmm.
feature that I can get a customer to put some skin in the game for, some effort, so that they know, like, if I let this lapse, like, all of that effort I've put in is gone, is a
Hmm.
really neat trick, I guess, to
Hmm.
keeping like a customer subscribed. But it's also
That's true
extremely
in so many
useful.
things, right?
Yes.
Like that's why magicians have you involved in whatever the trick that they're doing. That's why Betty Crocker like made it so you had to add eggs and oil to the cake so that way you're still baking it. Like this is a thing that we know about
Mm,
human nature. Like you need to be
yep.
involved, and when you are involved, you feel ownership over the success of that.
100%. Yeah, 100%. So, facial recognition is one of my favorite features. We're not quite there yet on the 100% accuracy of it. I've got two boys, and sometimes they look real similar, and sometimes it tags one as the other. But we're getting there. But yeah, that was one that customers really wanted, and we delivered on. So,
So this is
Yeah, I
like,
think those
that's
are the
two
two.
really good things that customers have asked you for that you were like, yeah, let's go ahead and do this. So let me start digging a little bit deeper then into the nuts and bolts of this flywheel that you've said, which I really like the way you illustrated it. And if I remember correctly, what you said is basically like, ask customers what they want, build what they want, tell them you built what they want. And so it's like, okay,
That's
that's
right.
very simple in concept. Um, you've got the forum, which is helping, but what are other ways, like other tools that you're using to be able to capture this feedback outside of the forum to be able to make sure that you're getting the right feedback from the right customers?
Yeah, so we do post cancellation surveys for
Mm-hmm.
almost everyone who cancels. I think we also do post-purchase surveys, which tell you a lot about why a customer chose a subscription at point of sale or not. Which we
Mm-hmm.
use No Commerce, um, which
Just
is
had
a
Jeremiah
great tool.
on like a
Jeremiah's the
week or two
bomb.
ago. Yes.
Oh, no way. Yeah, I love Jeremiah.
Yes.
He's fantastic. Um, but so we use no commerce in that. I
Uh-huh.
love digging through that. But you know, people tell you all sorts of things, and you can really dig into those and find out like where you need to fine tune things. You know, AI for Wise is like a tricky fine tuning. You don't want to send people too
Mm-hmm.
many notifications, but you certainly don't want to miss one.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you don't ever, you kind of want to err on the side of too many like person notifications, accidental ones even, versus like, you know, none. Right.
Yeah.
So we kind of get, you know, feedback in that realm where we kind of tune certain things, or we see that things are like completely breaking down somewhere. And we have to have like an emergency meeting to fix them. But post cancellation surveys are extremely helpful. That's one of my favorite things,
So
just to go in and look.
Jeremiah Prummer and I talked about a lot of the post-purchase survey stuff, but we didn't talk about post-cancellation stuff. That's not something that came up. So what
Mm.
are some examples of good questions that you can ask people that's beyond just like, hey, why are you canceling? And it's like, that's the obvious, but do you leave it open-ended? Are there certain questions that you're intentionally making sure that you get feedback on?
Yeah, so for post-purchase surveys, I write them myself, and one of the things I really want to dig into people, like dig in on the questions are one, obviously, is just why did you leave? And I leave that
Yeah.
pretty open-ended. But I also like, we actually do it inside the app, so you can get pretty immediate feedback if you have an app. If you just do like a ABCD, like a multiple choice, like why did you leave? And I change up them every couple of months, but one of the ones I want to figure out is, are people leaving due to quality issues, or are they leaving due
Mm,
to upgrading or downgrading a plan? Or a much scarier one is, are they leaving us entirely for another company, right?
mhm,
So you can kind of dig in, because a lot of people cancel just subscriptions because they dislike the company in general. Like they're having a hardware problem, not that they're having like a service problem. And that's kind of tricky to tease out. So you kind of have to ask
mhm,
people, is it a camera problem? Customers don't understand. Like when you're asking them, like, is this a camera problem? They're like, yeah, of course it's a camera problem. But it's like, no, no, no. Is it like, is it like a hardware? Do you dislike the hardware?
uh-huh,
Or do you just like the actual service, subscription service you're paying for? So you kind of have to ask nuanced questions like,
mm, mhm,
is person detection not working? Are your videos not being stored to the cloud? Like those are subscription problems versus
mhm,
like, you know, is the live stream, you know, taking a while to load is a common complaint.
mhm,
It's like, oh, maybe that's actually a Wi-Fi issue. You know, not
mhm,
necessarily a camera issue. And then you can kind of send them down a path. So one of my favorite things to do is, based on the response that someone gets. I've got one in there as like too expensive, right? And I will send you right down a cancellation flow path of like, totally get it. Here's a coupon for the next 6 months that can make it easier on you. Or um, here's a way, if you are a monthly subscriber and it's a lot more expensive, I'll send you down an annual path that's a lot cheaper over time. Or even, look, you were paying a lot of money for this subscription. You probably didn't need all that. Like, you only have two cameras. Like, maybe you only need
mhm.
one subscription instead of the unlimited subscription. So I'll send everyone down like these different pathways depending upon how they answer those cancellation flows. And they have really good success at converting people back to a subscription, or just improving customer sentiment. One of the
Mhm.
two. So,
I love
but
that.
yeah.
one of the things that I've noticed in cancellations for other SaaS, because I actually cut my teeth on SaaS before I even got into D2C. So I'm right there with you
Interesting.
on that.
Yeah.
Yeah. And one of the things that I remember being an issue is sometimes like pausing subscriptions because for whatever reason, there was a need to pause the subscription. Maybe this could be where they're like, well, I only needed these 6 months out of the year because the other 6 months of the year, I'm not running my business. Oh, well, okay, got it. That makes sense. Yeah, you don't want to pay for this during that time. Or they need to pause it because some kind of like financial hardship happened and they're just like, look, I love the service. I don't want to cancel. I just need to cancel until I find a new job. Okay, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. Let's just pause your subscription or let's do something to bridge that gap so that you don't leave entirely and you can come right back and make it easy to come back. And so I think that exit survey is one of the most important things that any company can get. Because it's one thing to hear from the people who just bought. They're the most excited. The other thing to hear from the
Right.
people who are leaving and why.
Yeah, that's right. And for security subscriptions specifically, if somebody is leaving a security subscription, it is a good chance that they have like a serious issue. Like, because you're not just
Sure.
like willy-nilly canceling ADT,
Right.
so yeah, it usually is like they're making a big decision to move on from you, or
Mhm.
they're in a serious financial situation of some kind, right? Or
Mhm.
they found a
Mhm.
serious flaw in whatever you're trying to sell them.
Mhm.
Now, a lot of times, people will just like randomly pick like a subscription and be like, yeah, just, go for it, like when they're setting up their camera. That totally happens. In fact, that's the vast majority of our churn is people are like get really excited. They sign up, they're like, I don't, don't really want this, don't really need this, don't really use the camera, and they leave. And
Mhm.
that's totally fine. I'll try to get you
Mhm.
back at some other point. I'll try to sell you some more cameras, see if we can get you deeper into the ecosystem. But
Mhm.
it's helpful to have those cancellation flows so you know the type of person you're dealing with.
Yeah.
And so I think that's good.
So, okay, what outside of forums, post-purchase surveys, exit surveys, what are some of the other things, or cancellation surveys? What are some of the other tools or tips that you have for people that are trying to gather up enough feedback of qualified feedback
Mhm.
to optimize around?
Qualified feedback. I mean, one of my favorite, this is crazy, but like one of my favorite things to do is yeah, I'll see someone cancel a subscription and I will email them myself. And I have done this a
Mm,
couple of times. I've even put my personal email out in the Wyze forum once because there was like a ton of issues going on with our subscriptions around the time I started. And I was like, look,
mm,
I know there's a lot of problems and I know we need to fix them quickly. And so here's my personal email. And
that's
that's
good.
probably a bad move because I did get a lot of emails. But it did cause me to move faster because I
Uh-huh.
was, getting inundated with emails. Um, but I think, personally talking to customers, personally calling customers like on a Zoom call, like so at Wise, we often do like $50 Amazon gift cards if you'll talk with, someone from Wise, especially around like if I read something interesting that you wrote in your post
Mhm.
cancellation flow, for example, I'll offer you $50 to come and get on a Zoom call and talk about it because I either like don't understand or I think you've hit on something really important. Because not everyone is. I don't have every single Wise product that exists personally. I don't
Yeah.
have them all. There's too many. Um, and I don't have every single camera that exists either. So there could be like very specific things that are occurring that I want a customer's feedback on, and you just go and talk to them. But I mean, the vast majority of people are pretty reasonable people, and they're canceling just because they don't have the money or they just don't think it's worth it, right? And then it's up to
Mhm.
you to say, okay, what features can we launch to make it worth it for you? Right. And
Yeah.
so you can talk to them, and based on the cancellation, you can figure out should I build this feature, right? You can go
Mhm.
rank it, put it in the form and rank it. I put features like, for example, we're working on baby mode right now, which is like highly anticipated. Um,
Nice.
and one of those came from like just interviewing a customer. He was like, yo, it would be super great if I could just turn my phone off and listen to the audio. And I was like, yeah, that's actually a good point. I wish I could do that too.
Sure.
So I can just listen to the baby cry, instead of like having to leave my phone like on the screen on all night, like, I can't sleep. It's
Mhm.
like, yeah, I totally get that. So we're working on that one too, and that came from like a
Brilliant
phone call
idea.
with the user. Yeah. It's awesome. So we're working
So
on it.
there's a lot of ideas, and you've got some good ideas coming from a lot of different sources. How do you weed through to make sure that the ones you're acting on are the right ones? And the reason, and I want to preface this by saying, you could end up in like the what is it, Henry Ford scenario, where it's like people could be asking for a faster horse, but what they really wanted was an automobile type thing, right? So even if they rank this higher in the forum, how do you guys as a team evaluate if this is the right next feature to launch or not?
Good question. So I think this will go back to AI eventually, but I, th- for us, I always look at how big is the target audience for the feature that
Mm,
has been requested. So let's take baby mode as an example. Parents are a really big audience for Wise, right? So I
sure.
know that if I launch a feature targeted at parents, it's going to get it's going to be well received, right?
Mm,
And I will have a large pool of people at which I can target to say, look, we've launched this feature. Then after we've looked at target, like how big is the demographic of people who want this? It is, will that demographic pay for this? Because you
mm,
can work all day long on a feature that no one will pay for. We have at Wise. We
sure.
tried to launch, a subscription, like I said, where, essentially you had like a 24/7 professional agent looking at your camera all the time. Um, and people thought that was creepy.
Sure.
Um, and we didn't really anticipate it. We kind of just thought this is a very helpful feature. It's like having your own security guard. Why
Hmm.
wouldn't people want this? And we kind of forgot that most of our customers just kind of have cameras anywhere, and it's like
Hmm.
they think that it's kind of creepy to have a camera. Like, we're trying to convince people to like put them in your house, put them everywhere, and people are like, I'm not going to
Sure.
do that if there's somebody watching. And so,
Yeah.
it's stuff like that when we worked really hard on that, like
Yeah.
making sure we got the correct security protocols in place and all of that. We were charging extra for the feature and people just didn't want it. And they told us they
Hmm.
didn't want it. We built it anyways. So that's the kind of thinking that we don't want to have at Wise. But
Right.
the question is like, how big is the target audience? And will that target audience pay for the feature? Parents with baby mode, 100%. That's a slam dunk,
Hmm. Hmm. Um, is there a cautionary tale where you listened to the wrong advice? So like that one may have, I don't know if that one was it, maybe even too, because maybe that
Mm,
came from somebody. Somebody was like, "Hey, you guys should do this," and you're like, "Yeah, that's a great idea." But if that wasn't coming from a customer, if that one was internal, is there any examples where you can think of where you listen to the customer, it rose up really high in the forums, it seemed like it had the right idea, and you don't even have to share the idea if you don't want. But is there an idea that you could think of where you're like, "Yeah, this one backfired"?
so I don't think the one I mentioned before was a good one.
Yeah.
Um, we have like started work on a few of them and then kind of thought better of it. There are
Mm,
a ton of ideas in the forum that I know people really want that it is very unlikely we will ever do. Um, Gosh, they're probably gonna get pissed at me when
you
I
don't
talk
have to
about a
share
few of
them if you
these.
don't want. This is
No,
yeah,
no. So this kind of goes back to like the revenue idea. Like
yeah.
the feature can be fantastic. It can be also available and people want it really badly to a wide audience of people. But if it doesn't make money, then you shouldn't launch it, especially
Right,
if it's going to like lose you money. So
right.
a great example of this for Wise is people have been begging us to launch a HomeKit camera, an Apple HomeKit camera. Now, I love Apple HomeKit. I think is super cool. I've tried it a couple of times. But if we launched an Apple HomeKit camera, we would lose the only thing keeping the business alive, which is our subscription revenue, right?
Mm,
So
mhm.
the question then becomes how much, if we were to implement like a HomeKit camera, we would have to charge an extraordinary amount for it. to make up for the loss in subscription revenue. So, it's like
Mm-hmm.
you can have these sorts of discussions where, this is a great idea. It goes to a large swath of people. But when you actually implement it and it turns out that, they wanted a $35 HomeKit camera and you launched a $150 HomeKit camera,
Sure.
it wasn't the thing they actually wanted. They wanted the Wyze cam for $35 that worked this way. And it's like,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we can do that. So, and there's like a myriad of those that exist,
Yeah.
or very niche, smart home ideas like connect to Samsung smart things, for example. It's like, yeah, but like doing that doesn't boost us in revenue in any way, like, and I would hate to
Yeah.
attach it to a subscription and make you pay for it. So I think there are just like kind of a balance you need to take to implementing features and listening to customers. I think most people get it.
Well,
Um,
and this is important for them. And what I love that you just shared this idea because I feel like it doesn't get talked about enough. If you are going to launch this, even though it's maybe what a lot of people want, like you said, they want the $35 Wyze camera with the HomeKit. They don't want a $150 one. Like I like this where if you launch this though, some other product, and it ends up causing you to lose revenue. So let's say you did still do it for $35.
sure.
The issue is that they don't gain a benefit. They lose all of the other benefits because as a company, you're just going to sync and you go out. And so all the other
Correct.
features that they have that they love, they lose. And so if customers understand that there's this balance where you're like, I can launch that, I can give you that for 6 months before we go bankrupt. And then you don't have any of this stuff. Which do you prefer?
100%. Yeah, 100%.
Then they would side with you on that. Yeah, you're right. Let's not launch that feature. I'd rather have
Right, but
these other things
you
instead.
can't have this
Right.
internal,
No,
chat with the customer. It'd be great,
it
because
would be.
they'd be like, oh yeah, I totally get it now. And sometimes we do, sometimes we do have like those sorts of discussions, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right. It's dead on. Yeah.
What other things have you found to be in the subscription business side of things, especially with what you guys are doing there, to be incredibly helpful for growth in general? Let's just say like this doesn't have to be necessarily how you're approaching subscriptions, but if you were going to share out your viral tweet on D2C Twitter about how
Mm.
to grow subscription business, what else are we not talking about that you're like, oh, we should also talk about this?
Yes. So I have a extremely strong stance on the cadence of subscriptions.
Mm,
Um, so I think I think most subscription cancellations have to do with either one product or just two, money. And I think the money part is not often talked about. Um, and so, like I write viral tweets, I write viral emails. That's like what I do for the subscription side for Wise. And the most viral one I've ever written was just a letter to the customer talking about how badly inflation sucks. And it
mm,
was just like a heartfelt letter from me saying like inflation sucks right now. You are paying a monthly bill of X. I emailed all the monthly people and said, this is your monthly bill today. If you switch it to an annual plan, and I know it costs more right now, you will save. I'm going to send this one out tomorrow, actually. You will save $30. Go spend that $30 on anything but a Wise subscription. Doesn't matter what it is, but please go spend it. This is just a PSA from me to you.
wow.
And that one crushed it. I mean,
Yeah.
we made a lot of money. But I mean, that's just, I feel like most people understand this innately, but they just don't talk to the customer like that through an email or through
Mhm.
any like marketing.
Mhm.
But most people are just really concerned about money. I'm no different. Like we said in the intro, like I'll talk your ear off about like, charging my Tesla at the Ingles while I run to the gym across the street just
Yeah,
to
yeah.
save like 20 cents on charging. But like, I think um, m- monthly subscriptions are great to get people in the door, especially when it's like a free trial offer. But once you start charging them monthly, I think they hate you. Like, I really think
Mm,
they hate you. Um,
mhm.
Very few people hate their Costco subscription. Costco subscriptions are all annual. There's zero monthly
Sure.
Costco subscriptions, right? Um, So I do everything I possibly can to move people off monthly as fast as humanly possible. Because I do think that them seeing that bill show up in their bank account every month makes them hate you, right? Versus, and I think just in general, people hate subscriptions. So if you can make it seem less like a subscription, more, that's a good thing. So just billing them. I've even thought about launching a 5-year subscription, right? So it only bills you once every 5 years or 2 years. Something where it's like, I
Mm,
bought this and now I have it and I don't need to think about it. Because people hate
yeah,
thinking about it. They don't want to look through their bank account and think, oh, what subscription do I need to cancel now?
totally.
Like what streaming service do I want to cancel this month and then sign up for Disney Plus the next month? Like people hate that. Like it takes up so much brain space. So I
It
try to
works.
eliminate that as much as possible.
It works for domain names. I've got some
Does it
domain names
really?
that are registered on like 10-year deals or whatever, right? Because you're just like, oh, I'm
It's
going to use this
amazing.
one day.
It's smart.
Well, and they
That's
even make it
incredible.
seem like that's a good thing. It's like, oh, because it's been registered for so long. This is why this is good for you. And you're like, yeah, I don't know. But I don't want to think about it, right? You're just like, I don't know. I don't want it to expire. I don't want it to just, yeah, put me on the 10-year plan. And so I can see where there's some value in that for a lot of things.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
uh,
But
what about
yeah, I think
what about
go ahead.
AI? You told me before about how you think uh, the usefulness of AI has gotten, I don't know, out of hand in the way people are talking about using it lately, products, brands, etc.
Yeah, it bothers me so much. We just had a meeting at Wise about this last night. Um, yeah, I just think that I'm from North Carolina, so I'm not in the tech bubble, right? I'm completely
Mm,
outside the tech bubble. I live up in the mountains of North Carolina. All of my neighbors have like tractors and trucks. Like that's the area I live in. If you talk to
yeah,
those people, zero of them are excited about AI. No one in Middle America seems stoked about AI. But as soon as I
that's
hop on
so
a
true.
plane and I get over to Seattle or I go to LA, it's just like everyone's so excited. And you're like, but why? And this kind of goes back to my point of like build the things people want to buy and build the things people get excited about buying. I have, yet to see someone from my neighborhood go out and spend their hard-earned money on an AI product like the ones I'm seeing come out, like a
Sure.
generative AI product, right? No one I know in my immediate area spends money for Chat GPT. They just don't.
That's fair.
So, and it's even more apparent when it comes to security because people are very take security very personally. And if you start adding AI into this mix of security, people start getting freaked out. They start getting a little
Mm,
weird. So you need to make sure that, whatever AI tool you're building, it's extremely specific to solve a very specific problem that cannot be solved any other way. So, like at Wise, we're working on a few AI tools that I think are going to be great, but we've worked on some, really dumb ones in the past, that I think are just like blowing money because AI is not cheap. Like to
no.
develop it and to implement it is extraordinarily expensive. And I feel like a lot of people step over the like list of what people want to go build the AI thing nobody wants.
Mm,
And they just end up alienating their customer base because they all live in a bubble and everyone's really excited about this one thing. And that is my like I feel like I have to hammer this home all the time, and I'm sure people at Wise will be upset for me saying it, but I've said it over and over and over. Like, just build the things people want. Don't get caught up in the like AI excitement. And if you're gonna build an AI tool, make sure it fits those category of like, does this apply to a wide audience and would they pay for it? Right. And I think
hmm
the would they pay for it question, people just like kind of skip over that one when it comes to AI. They're like, yeah, this will work for everybody. But it's like, are they going to pay extra for that? Like
Yeah.
extra,
Yeah.
because it costs more to do your AI thing. It's not like you develop a feature and, it's just out there now and it doesn't actually cost you reoccurring revenue because
Right.
it does. Like any AI feature that's running through a model is going to cost you like continuously. It's like the
Right.
company itself has signed up for a subscription that it's selling to customers, right?
Hmm.
So it's not like a one and done thing. So I think like you have to be very cautious if you're going to be building something that's going to charge you in perpetuity as a company. So anyways, that's just my hot take.
It's wise words. No, I love it. And I think the thing that I like about Apple positioned it well, I think. And
I agree.
everybody loves to hate on Apple, and it's easy to hate on,
Yeah,
a company as big
super
as
easy.
Apple, but the
Yeah.
idea of AI for the rest of us, or, Festivus for the rest of us kind of thing. But the idea behind that is it really was like, how do we just make this more simple? So that way it's just, here's the things you want to do. Oh, you want to do this?
Mhm.
Well, we just do that. And they kind of touched on it being AI because you have to touch on it. That is the marketing term that matters a little bit, but it was less about the AI. It was more about just like, here, you could do these things. And you're like, okay,
It's
great.
the use
That's the problem that
cases.
we saw. Yeah, the use cases.
Yes, it's the use cases. It always is the use cases. Like the iron, I'll tell you a little story. So it's not about AI, but we were getting so many complaints from our customers that our notifications were stupid. Like that the notifications we were sending them was like, we'd say like complete motion capture, and then below it would be like some weird like timestamp, and like it just wasn't making any sense. So I was like, let's just overhaul the notifications to be like normal notifications, like person detected, first line, on the front door at this time, second line. We'll just redo it. So I took all the subscribers and I went through like every notification they could possibly receive from all of our devices and just rewrote all of the notifications they would receive. And I sent them an email and saying, look, we redid all your notifications because they sucked. And it was one of the
Sure.
biggest subscription sign up days we've ever had. And it wasn't even a subscription
Mm,
product. It was just, like, oh, they're working on something. They're listening to me.
sure.
Here it goes. Right. But yeah, back to your point. I do think Apple did AI well because they're focused mainly on the use cases, and someone like Google is focused mostly on the AI part. Like even during the Olympics, I think Google got blowback from launching a commercial where the dad was like, he was like writing a letter to the
Mm,
Olympian,
hmm,
and
hmm,
he asked, Google Gemini to do it, and people were like,
hmm,
yo, that's not cool. Like this, if this is a
hmm.
personal letter coming from your daughter, you should, have it come from your daughter. And I think, the use cases that Google and other people are like imagining are just not real. Like
Right.
they're not something people will pay for. So,
Yeah.
or they just find it creepy.
I'm with you. I can't think of anybody else that I know that actually has a subscription to any generative AI tools outside of like my bubble of marketers and all of us. And
I know.
man, so many subscriptions to a lot of different ones because I'm testing them all out, using them all in as many ways as I possibly can to make sure that we stay on the cutting edge of what's going on there.
Sure.
But I will say there are two good use cases that I have for this that I'll share that I like for people that are listening. One, Google Gemini. Gmail is my favorite inbox. And so Google Gemini is genuinely helpful in your inbox, as well as Google Sheets and some other things. But on the inbox, the one that I found, if you're a parent like me, I have one in high school, one in middle school, and one in lower school. And the amount of emails that you get from those schools is absolutely
So true.
insane. So I
So
can just
true.
ask Gemini, I'm just like, can you look through the emails from blank.com and let me know over the last 7 days, let me know if there's anything important that I need to do or anything that I need to make sure. It's like,
Incredible.
and it
Oh,
summarizes it pretty well. I still might miss a few things, but it's a lot better than
yeah.
reading 30 emails. So that's
Oh
one.
man. Yeah, that's a good one.
The other one that I've been enjoying is ChatGPT is remarkably helpful for tutoring, let's say. I love
Mm,
math. And there are some times though when I'm busy or I've got, dinner with a client or whatever's going on. And so I can't help necessarily my daughter with math that night. But she can ask ChatGPT. And the thing that I like about it is it's not just going to tell her how to solve it. It will, but it's going to teach her how and why, et cetera. And so,
mm.
she could be like, hey, I don't understand this problem in my textbook. Take a picture of it and it will walk her through it. And it's like, oh, that's this. And here's how you solve this. And then she could go, okay, I got the right answer, but I'm not sure why I got the right answer. Like,
Hmm.
what am I doing? Right. And so it's like, it can re-explain it in different ways. And so it's genuinely like having a very good tutor that can be patient and walk you through that problem from 5 different approaches with, illustrations. It's really helpful. I want
That's
the
great.
family plan. I'm like, ChatGPT, please come out with a family plan so I can have everybody on this.
That's great. Yeah, I will say one of the things I use ChatGPT for specifically is when I'm writing a tweet and it's too long, I will tell
Mm.
ChatGPT to shorten it. And then I'll get like some ideas of like, okay, how do I make this, the same tweet be a lot shorter, which is nice.
This is a good time for me to call out too that this entire episode is not actually real. It's all AI generated. Matt's not here. I'm not here. We're just AI just coming at you live. I'm just
Oh
kidding.
man.
But I do want to get to know the very real human being, Matt Van Swol, a little bit more. Because this is one of my favorite parts that we dig into, like who you are. And one of the things that you and I were talking about a little bit before are, let's just say, quirks or things that make us unique. And one of the things that makes you unique, and let's say especially gifted at what you do, is you do have, I mentioned insatiable appetite. You do have, let's say, more or less an insatiable appetite towards whatever it is that you decide you're going to dig into. That leads to some very good things, at least some challenging things. But take me through a little
Yeah.
bit more of like your insatiable appetite.
Yeah. So you could also just redefine that as addictive personality.
Yes. I figured I'd let you say that
So
versus me say that.
okay, yeah, fair enough. Yeah. So yeah, I think a lot of just go-getters in general, like people who are doers, have this, energy where they find something they really love and they just go down that rabbit hole until they like come back up on the other side with something to show for it. I don't
Mm-hmm.
think I'm any different in that respect. So, for me, it kind of changes all the time. So in some of the ways that's good, it's, um, for example, like trying to figure out what things people will pay for with subscriptions. It'll be, I get really into lifting weights and it's like run down the rabbit hole of like, okay, do I do creatine? How much protein should I do? And, you run down that rabbit hole and then
Yep.
you fail. You forget about it and a hurricane hits. Or,
We're going to talk about that. That's a
yeah,
precursor to something we're going to talk about.
yeah,
Keep going,
yeah,
though.
or it's how do you like I think failure, like over and over failure is just like a very strong motivator. So like I wrote a
Mm-hmm.
tweet, it flopped. Let me go find other people's tweets that have done well. Why are they doing well? How can I copy the cadence that with which they're writing? How do you take something mundane and make it interesting? I think these are all like just in general like great marketing
Mm-hmm.
tips. Is like how do you find something mundane and make it like whoa. That's essentially Twitter in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
But for one of the bad ways that works out is I'm an alcoholic, so and for drinking I can't touch the stuff, but I will drink Diet Cokes all day long. You replace like one bad habit with a good habit. For me, that's milkshakes. So I have like a milkshake every single night. I used to have a beer every single night. Now I have a milkshake every single night. Mixed
Nice.
Tracks is my personal favorite. But yeah, so I definitely have addictive personality. You can kind of see it through my weird career path. Going from like, I guess we could talk about this now, but like, I dropped out of medical school, I was a nuclear scientist, I was a photographer. Before that, I valeted cars. I've been through the works of the career path for sure. But there's always like something interesting to like run down, and you come out on
Mm-hmm.
the other side of like, okay, this is, makes me a more well-rounded person and can understand, other people better. Um, but I guess you want to hop into my backstory or no?
Yeah. Well, I mean, it
Okay.
is a good transition into that. I think the thing that I like about that is, to your point, I would even say that it makes you more empathetic towards a lot of different customers that you have. So that way, when you're looking through the feedback that you have, you can look at it from a lot of different perspectives because you're like, well, I've dug into a lot of these different areas and vastly different things and come at it with a lot of different perspectives. And so, I don't know, somebody who maybe shares some similarities there. My ADHD definitely makes it that way for me, where it's like I will run down a lot of very interesting rabbit trails, and there are things where I'm like, I am all in on this until I'm not, and then once I'm not, I'm just not, right?
You're just
And so,
right.
so it's allowed me to learn a lot of different things, which I think is I don't know, it's a superpower in and of itself, as
Mm,
long as you learn to see the good part of that. And I would say maybe if I was going to share anything more heartfelt there, it would be to those who feel that way as well. Don't beat yourself up too much about it either, because it can be used for so many good things as well, if that makes sense. And you can
100%.
spiral out of control in a downward spiral very easily if you allow yourself to feel defeated every time that you really do move on to something new, and that's okay.
It's totally okay. Yeah, yeah. I've quit so many things. Yeah,
Yeah.
so many things that I knew were not right for me. So yeah, totally. I took the MCAT 4 times. So and I was rejected from medical school 3 times. So I totally get
Wow.
it.
Okay. So
Um,
backstory, like you said. All right, let's dig into some of this.
Yeah, so I guess I could. I grew up in rural South Carolina, very poor. One of the worst educated parts of the whole country is where I grew up. So it's homeschooled, um, and that allowed me to do all sorts of cool things. One of them was go to a technical college at a really young age. So I was going to like a small technical college at 15.
Wow.
I ended up getting a welding degree while I was at the technical college, which was fun. I always tell my wife, like, if everything goes to crap,
Yeah,
I'll
right.
go out and become a welder one day, though I haven't done it in like a decade. Um, but anyway, so I went through that whole process, went to college, very intent. My dad's a doctor, and all of my siblings look like they're going down the doctor path or are doctors. So I was very convinced like the doctor path is for me. And one of the funny things I think about now is like one of the reasons for that was, I lived in a very poor town. So the only people that were crushing it were doctors. Those were the only ones I
Mm.
knew.
Hmm.
So for
Hmm.
me, it was like, the only way to crush it in life is to become a doctor. So I was just hell bent on like, doctor is it, right? Um, but I think the awkward part is that, I never really considered, am I actually going to be good at this? Or is this something I want to do? But
Hmm.
anyway, so I went through college, got a biology degree and a chemistry degree, and was like, yo, I'm just gonna head right into medical school. And like I said, I took the MCAT. I didn't do awesome. I got pretty almost immediately rejected for medical school. And I was like, oh no, what am I gonna do now? Like that was the plan, right? There was no plan other than that. Um, so I was living in a house with 9 other guys. It was like 1,100 square feet. I was valeting cars. I remember my dad still had access to my bank account at this time, and he like pulled me aside once, like later on in life, and he was like, I remember looking at your bank account and thinking, how in the hell is he making it? And I was like, I don't even know. I like bought this like giant bag of rice. It was like a 30-pound bag of rice, and I had this like little piece of the chicken. I would essentially like just make rice and chicken, and that's how I made it. Um,
Yeah.
but anyways, so I was like, I have no idea what I'm gonna do. So I sent out my resume to everyone, like literally everyone. It was like Indeed.com or something, just like in the hopes I could get something back. And I waited for months, and I never did. And then I got this email from the Department of Energy that was like, "We'd love to have you interview for this nuclear scientist position." And I deleted it immediately. I was like, "Yeah, this is a fraud.
Yeah,
This
right.
can't be real." And then thankfully they had my phone number. I guess I had put it on my application. They called me and left a voicemail, and they're like, "Yo, we actually really like you to come interview for this." So I was like, "Okay, I guess I'm gonna go do that." So I went down there, I interviewed. Turns out they're looking for someone with like a background in metallurgy. And like I just said, like I kind of had one, like I did welding.
Hmm.
And I had a chemistry degree, and they thought that was cool. So I got the job, which was really surprising, and ended up working as a associate nuclear scientist for the Department of Energy at the Savannah River site for almost 4 years.
Wow.
I did a lot of nuclear waste stuff. I got a Q clearance. That's like the top secret clearance for the Department of Energy. Most of my
Nice.
work was focused on like nuclear waste and stuff, but I did do some
Sure.
weapon stuff, which was fun. When I left, they were like, the only places you can't go are China and Russia. It's like, cool. Wasn't planning on it anyways. Um, but so I did that for a while. And then like I said, I was taking the MCAT during like this time period, and still not getting into medical school. But eventually, I got into one of the medical master's programs that was essentially just like you get through the program and you're a shoo-in to medical school.
Mm,
Um, so I left the Savannah River site after getting that program, and I started there, started working there. And during that time, I had done a lot of photography work. Um, I had started like this big Instagram account, which is so funny because I'm not on Instagram anymore. But I started this big Instagram account where I was doing landscape photography. This will come in later in the story, but essentially, I was at a master's program in medical school, and I hated it. I hated it so much,
sure.
right? With a passion, and I should have known this going in, right? But I
Yeah.
was like, I was doing okay, but I was like, I cannot. Like, I went and shadowed every doctor at the hospital, like as many like emergency room, vascular surgeons, oncologists, all of them. And none of them seemed that happy to me. And
Mm,
that was just like kind of this turning point where it's like, why are these guys like not like they're making a lot of money and they'll tell you they are making a lot of money, but they don't really seem that happy. And that was like a real big turning point for me because I was already unhappy and I knew like, okay, and some of these guys will even tell you like, don't go into my field. And you're like,
mm,
whoa, what? Well, that's a
yeah.
crazy thing to say. So at this time, I was sitting in an anatomy class, and I got an email on my computer from someone at Apple that said, "Hey, look, we saw one of your photos that you shot on your iPhone. We'd love to sponsor you." And I was like, "Okay, I'm doing this." And I dropped out of that program, the medical program. And during that time period, I kind of met my wife, and I was like, "Hey, we're just gonna do this thing." So I made like
Mom,
a huge
Dad,
transition. Yeah,
I'm dropping out
I
of
made,
med school to become an
oh,
Instagram
you don't even know. And
influencer.
and go off with this girl that I met like a couple of months ago. It was insane. Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone said I was crazy, and rightfully so. Well deserved. But it worked out.
Yeah.
So my wife and I essentially started a company where, she was a documentary filmmaker, I was a photographer, and we did marketing campaigns. And that's where I kind of got into like the whole marketing side of things. I was like, this is really cool. So I really started out on the content creation side. And then, we did a lot of travel photography. I worked for United. We had contract with United and with Hyatt Hotels. Would go around and travel to them, shoot like, they would open up a new hotel or, open up, a new airway going to a new location. We'd film it, photograph it, all of that, and submit the content. It was super fun. Um,
Hmm.
and then COVID hit and there was no travel photography to be done.
Right.
So my wife ended up getting this really fantastic contract with Discovery Plus during that time period where they were doing like design rebuild shows, which were like basically the only shows you could shoot during COVID because they were like,
Mhm.
it's an empty house, they're just rebuilding it. And she was like, "Well, I'm going to leave our company to go do this." And I was like, "Well, I guess I should find something else to do." So I applied to Wyze and got it and started out as just launching products, So I'd shoot the photos and like write the scripts, and do all that stuff. And then, like I said, like I transitioned into the services side, and that's what I'm doing now. So
Your
yeah,
story is the epitome of one of my favorite Bible verses. I hope that's okay if I share a Bible verse
yeah,
here.
totally. Yeah,
Um, Proverbs 16:9, which basically says that in a man's heart he plans his paths, but the Lord directs his steps. It's like you had like this plan and you're like, well, I'm
100%.
going here, oh, I'm going here, oh, I'm going here. It's like, well, God's just directing your
Terrible
steps
plan.
through all these random different things that lead you to where you
It's totally
are.
true. Yeah, it's totally true.
Mm.
That's totally accurate.
I wanted to, there's so much there, but I'm going to leave that be because there's one other thing that I want to make sure that we really get to, which is, let's say you, some of the stuff that you're talking about with nuclear science, you this morning saw some nuclear waste. I think it was this morning that the tweet went out. Maybe it was yesterday.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah,
Nuclear waste
somebody
floating
sent it to
down
me. Yeah.
because you
Yeah.
are okay. You're right there in the heart of Asheville, North Carolina, and everything that just took place there. And I want to call out some of the attention of some of the things because you you were doing well on Twitter before. Your stuff is absolutely blowing up now because you're calling out a lot of what's happening down there. I think that is not being covered well enough by a lot of the mainstream media.
Totally agree with that.
And so what is the actual situation like? What's going on there?
So terrible. I wasn't, you know, I mean, you can see my Twitter. I left Twitter for like 7 months. I was like, I got
Hmm.
other things to do. Um, but Helene hit. I live in Western North Carolina, and Helene hit, and it was like a bomb went off, like right where we live. And for a while, there's a lot of media attention. Like everyone was here. Biden was here, like Trump was here, everybody was here. And then, the election kind of like took over the news cycle. And I was like, yeah, I kind of get it. Um, but then it was just like crickets, for a while. And you will have like these guys that are just like the only thing they're doing, they've like left their jobs, and the only thing they're doing are like driving mobile homes in because people have no homes. Like all day. Like that's all they're doing. And you're like, why is this not getting a lot more news coverage than it should?
Yeah.
And I was driving my son. This is a great like segue, but like I was driving my son to school this morning, and the highways are kind of clogged because all of the roads that people normally take to places are washed out. So like this one main highway is just super clogged. So I was like, I'm just gonna go like a different route. So we went down a route close to the river, and just like on either side are buildings where like I used to go eat. Like I think I posted this on Twitter, but like had my first date, like a park that I used to like walk my kids at. And it is unrecognizable. Like the buildings have caved in completely. There's like I think one of the most shocking parts is like you're driving by and there's like these trees that are now like dead because they've had so much water just rushing by them, but they're still standing, and at the very top of the tree will be like a bike, or like a sheet from somebody's bed. And it's
Wow.
that way for miles, like miles and miles and miles.
Jeez.
And it's like, I couldn't get a ladder tall enough to get that out of the tree. And that's where the water was, you know? Um, and you're just looking at this and you're like, how long is this going to take to clean up? Like
Hmm.
years, and years
Hmm.
and years. And then you'll just keep on driving, and all of a sudden you'll see like people in tents, just like, down by the river. It's 39 degrees this morning. They're in a tent. It's cold,
Hmm.
and then, I was, like I said, like I was not political before this, and I had to
Hmm.
get political because it was so infuriating to see just like, people in these tents, and we're sending money overseas, and you're like, yo, this doesn't make a lot of sense. Like, just doesn't make a lot of sense. Um, I think that's probably why I got so vocal on Twitter. Is I was just getting really upset. Just seeing like so many people having to endure so much hardship for no reason. Like there's a FEMA camp, like an encampment for the FEMA workers, like 10 miles that way, and they've got like over 50 of these trailers just kind of like sitting there. And it's like, hey, I drove by someone today that probably could use one of those, and they've been sitting there for like
Hmm.
2.5 weeks. You're like,
Hmm.
can we get, like, can we get these to people? I met up with a guy. His name is Sean Hendricks. He's been like driving RVs down for people single-handedly, just handing out like homes. I think he's handed out like 22 RVs to people who have lost their homes. And it's like, how is that dude doing more
Right.
than this, multi-billion-dollar agency? Because you either have an agency that's doing something, or you just don't have the agency.
If I remember
It should
correctly,
be that simple, you
if I
know?
remember correctly, you said that he had like brought down 12 before FEMA delivered their first one
This is
or something
correct.
like that.
Yeah, which is
Yeah.
wild, that's insanity.
Yeah.
So it's like, I don't even know where to start on with that one. But yeah,
So what I'm,
what I've seen is like more citizens doing things for citizens
which is
than government
encouraging.
doing things for citizens.
It's so why I wanted to bring this up here today because I wasn't even sure if we were going to still record this today. And you're like, no, we got to do this. And so I'm glad that we did. Because
Okay.
I want to make sure that people have something that they can do. One, I want them to realize the situation down there, that it is as grave as anything that anybody has seen. Like that's what it is right now. Like
It
it
is.
is still an absolute mess. And two, that there are things that they can do to help. And one of the things that you tweeted out that I was like, this is a very easy way for people to get involved and help, which was you posted a tweet, and I'll link to it, of a
Yeah.
bunch of local businesses that are still able to take orders. Maybe they're, online or things like that. And so it's like, look, if you're not down there, you can't do anything, or maybe you don't have homes that you can deliver down there. You can support these businesses who are just barely trying to survive.
Oh yeah.
And so,
Oh
so
yeah.
I'll share that tweet.
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, so like foot traffic, Asheville is a city where it's basically almost entirely dependent upon tourism. And obviously nobody's coming. Like, I totally get it. Like it just went through like a horrific period. The city's trying to bring people back in, but people are like, yo, it looks terrible. I totally get it, So foot traffic
Mhm.
is down like 95% in the downtown area. Tourism is down like 90% across like the whole area. So you're having these stores that have like nobody in them. Their workers have lost their homes, right?
Mhm.
They're just leaving. Like, and I'm very concerned that the city itself will become a ghost town after the winter is over. Because summer fall area is like the boom time, and then winter is like the drought. And it's like the
Mhm.
boom time never happened and the drought is now here. So
Mhm.
so yeah, please do share that tweet. That would be great. But when you're thinking about buying Christmas presents, you totally buy them from Amazon. I'm a sucker for that too.
Totally.
But there are local businesses that could use that money too. So that'd be super great. But yeah,
Yeah.
things are rough. I think the biggest part is there's just no clean water yet in the city of Asheville, which is mind-boggling. Like I was reading, I'll probably tweet this out later today, but I was reading that they finally got the chlorine of the water down to under 8 parts per million. So if you don't know, like a swimming pool is like 1.5 parts per million. The
Wow.
maximum like legal safety limit for like drinkable water is 3. So, they finally like got it under 8. So it was above 8, before that.
Mm.
So it's just like, yeah, like this is going to take a while. And, they have this thing where they come on the radio and are just talking about like, when are we going to have clean water? And the city was like, I think mid-December. And everyone was like, whoa. And then the Army Corps of Engineers gets on and was like, I don't think it's going to be December. I think it's going to take longer than December. People are like 2025, like no clean water.
Wow.
And what people don't understand about that is clean water is how you cook and it's how you clean. So if you own a restaurant, you're not open right now, like in the
Mm.
city of
Mhm.
Asheville. So 100% of the restaurants that rely on the city's water, which is a lot of people,
Mhm.
those restaurants are closed or they're paying out the wazoo for a tanker truck to come and fill up, just sit outside
Oof.
their business and, fill it up with water. And that's not going to work forever because it's about to get really cold.
Mhm.
So, it's not going to be practical to have these things outside. So, anyways, that's a very long tangent, but all that to say, yes, please, and if you do want to
Yeah.
come, we'd love to have you. God, do we need it?
Yeah.
Like my wife and I have decided to not take any vacations out of the like WNC area. We'll just like go to Airbnbs that are local or hotels that are local and kind of do like a staycation here just to keep the money,
Amazing.
in the
Yeah.
city. So
And I don't know how to help with the water situation. There are smarter people than me working on that.
100%.
But I want to bring awareness to it if I
Thank
can,
you.
and I want to at least make sure that in some way, again, encourage people like go check out the list. Like I said, it will be in the show notes, but the list of the businesses that you can buy from if you're not down there and you're just all spread out all over, but try to support them in some way would be awesome. I
Yeah,
don't want to end on
thanks.
that note though, because there's some other cool
Yeah,
things that you and I have
so
talked
sad
about that
note.
I want to bring this
Yeah,
back up just a little bit, even though that's important. And I don't want to make light of that at all.
no, no,
Um,
totally.
but you're a tech geek, and so we were talking about passions, and you're a tech
100%.
geek, and you were talking about solar energy research and kind of where solar energy is going. Um, Take me through. Let's just say, all right, we get through all the craziness of what's going on now. We're looking to the bright future and where the
Oh
future is
man.
going with solar. What's the bright future here with solar?
Well, I think everyone in the city of Asheville will have solar panels and Tesla batteries. By the time this is over, I've spent an ungodly amount of money on batteries and solar
Sure.
panels like in the past month or so. But yeah, so I mean, I kind of geek out. That's how I'm. yeah, I've got like a giant battery down here. I've just decided to like just power this whole little system here with a solar panel that's outside and a battery. Anyone can do that. If you're just like, how do I get started in solar? I don't want to spend like 20 grand. It's like, yeah, just buy a little battery and put like a 200-watt panel outside. You can pretty much power anything, like a
Hmm.
computer or something.
Like,
But
is
I
this a
do plan to
DIY
build
setup or just go buy a kit or?
super DIY. It's running through the window, dude. Like, here's the cord, it's running right out the window. And there's a
Well, I don't
battery
know
on
if
the ground.
anybody can go do that then, Matt. You might need to provide some kind of direction.
No, it's very simple. It's like a cord that runs from the solar panel to the battery. It's just a really long cord.
All
Um,
right.
but yeah, I mean, you'll lose some efficiency running
What
like a
gauge is that?
50-foot
Yeah.
cord. I have no idea. It's
The
not
thickest
super
cord you can
thick.
get.
No, not quite. Um, but yeah, so I do plan on like building a ground solar array in the backyard at some point, like a really big one, because it require you have to get a permit to put it on your house, which sucks. Obviously, government
Mm,
sucks. So avoid that and just put it on the ground. Um, and you can
sure.
just you can put it on your driveway if you want. Like it doesn't matter. But if you put it on your house, the government gets involved. So I'm going to build like this giant solar array in the backyard and then have it hook up to. I love EcoFlow, by the way. Not affiliated
Mm.
with that brand in any way, but they are so good at just plug and play batteries and solar panels and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm a
So
geek for that, dude.
you said you could do ground arrays. Like, what
Mhm.
about like a carport? I mean, like, it's not on the ground, but like that could work too, right? So it's like you have
Totally.
your whole
Yep.
driveway there. You could still use your
Totally.
driveway though.
Yep, totally. You could
Mm.
do that. I've seen people like I got a friend at Wyze who he's got like a balcony at his apartment and they sell like, balcony mounted solar panels. You can just like, hang them out the balcony, which is cool. So you can do
Nice.
that too. So yeah.
So why solar? You were in nuclear a little bit, so you've seen some of the
Nuclear's great.
nuclear scientists. So okay, so
Yeah.
yeah, take me through what's the future of energy then in general
Well, the reason
from your
nuclear is
perspective?
not as, proliferated as it has
Sure.
been is it's just really overregulated. Like, in fact, like one of
Mm.
like the core tenets of the Department of Energy is like we make our money by holding the keys to the nuclear stuff. You wouldn't think of like government agency like, oh, their core tenet is to make money. Totally is. Like that is their core
Mm.
tenet. Like, how do we keep the revenue flowing to us? And so, they basically hold the keys to all of the nuclear stuff. So if you want to go build any nuclear reactor, you got to come through the Department of Energy. And,
Mm.
there's just a ton of very unnecessary regulation and people involved in that sort of process. So I hope that goes away. Not all of it, of course, but like,
Sure.
quite a bit of it. Because I do think nuclear, like, you cannot talk about clean energy and not talk about nuclear. Otherwise,
Right.
you're not going to have it. There's just too much energy that needs to be produced, especially with AI.
Totally.
And I think Microsoft is even building like their own nuclear reactor. So,
Yeah, and Google
um,
as well, right? Like a few of them have basically committed to building
gonna
them.
have to. Yeah,
Yeah.
gonna have to. The biggest part is what to do with the waste, and that was obviously like what I spent a lot of my career working on. Is like the solutions are terrible. Like literally, the solution I worked on was um, put it in the ground. That was like the solution, and
Hmm.
what you would end up having are these football field sized tanks with nuclear waste from the 70s and 60s. And it was just in a stainless steel tank, like Cybertruck stainless
Hmm.
steel tank. And it had eaten through the tank and was leaking out. And they're like, oh, what do we do? And they're like, I don't know. Maybe we should put some chemicals in it to like try to neutralize it so it doesn't eat more holes in the tank.
Yeah.
They're like,
Oh,
so that's what I worked on at the Department of Energy. It's like, how do we
wow.
neutralize this some more? And it's like, that's actually not solving the problem. So they're like, but those tanks exist like in Hanford National Lab in Washington and in South Carolina. But I mean, if someone can come up with a better way to get rid of the waste, like we almost had Yucca Mountain, where it's basically, it's a very cool process where you essentially turn nuclear liquid into glass. It's called glass, and you put it in this
Mm.
stainless steel container. You put it in water for I don't know a couple of years for it to like, fizzle off the material. And then you store it long term. I mean, you have to bury it at this point. Like, unless
Hmm.
there's another solution, you have to just bury it somewhere in a mountain where no one will ever find it, and try to get to it. So that's like the big problem. Like nuclear energy is fantastic. It's what do you do with the byproducts that people are like, meh, I don't know. So I hope a
Yeah.
lot more work is done on that. But solar is it is like magic. Like that you can just take something that comes in the mail and just stick it outside in the sun, and all of a sudden your laptop is being powered. It feels magical, and it's
Yeah.
like, why is this not happening more? And solar used to be a lot more expensive than it is now.
Sure.
um, it's dramatically dropped in price. And I try to tell people this as often as I can, but like you can buy enough solar panels, used solar panels, to power
Use
your house for the cost of an iPhone.
really. I didn't even know used solar panels were a thing. I thought they kind of like up they've used up
100%.
their life. They're done.
No, 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 no. So you can
Hmm.
buy used solar panels that have like 85% of their efficiency left, which is quite a
Hmm.
bit, at like 80% the cost.
Sure.
You could, yeah. So like the 200-watt panel I have outside, um, was $42, right?
Wow.
And that's powering the whole system here. So you can imagine just buying like 20 of those, and building an array, and all of a sudden you've got like backup power for your house, at least for the
Where
essentials. For
where do we buy
what do
these?
you mean? I bought mine from a place called Santan Solar. That's where I
Okay.
bought mine. But
Just look
I have an
online. Use
affiliate
solar
link. But
arrays. Yeah.
yeah, but yeah, it's crazy. You can
Hmm.
totally build like a solar array. And um, it's obviously nice to like not spend a lot of money on electricity, but it like totally comes in handy if like the grid goes out. Like we were out of
If
power
or
for
when.
16 days. When? I think it's more of a
Right.
question of when. Um, so, but yeah, especially if you live in California, you know,
Hmm.
their grid tends to go out a lot. Even Texas had its grid go out in the cold,
Yeah.
so it does happen, rare as it may be, but it does. But yeah, solar, I'm a huge fan of solar and all things Apple, so I'm a sucker there too. So
Yeah, yeah. Well, you've got me with the all things Apple too. So I like where you're going with solar. Completely agree with you about nuclear. I think that we're going to see some radical improvement there over the next couple of years, partly because
that's
um, Google, Microsoft getting into it. Like they're just going to find ways that they have to make it. It will be imperative for them not to figure out how to make it better and more efficient. Um,
100%.
I remember my daughter coming home from school one day or whatever. It's like gas is bad, and it's like, well, no, like, and here's the one thing that I wanted to call out that like this is my take, right? So I'm going to say right now, this
Yeah,
is my opinion. I am not a scientist. Um, if you power the entire world with wind power, you will destroy the world. You will disrupt so many,
Mhm.
like, let's just say, like, bee patterns, bird patterns, other things. Like, you will destroy the world if we try to generate all of our power needs through that. Same thing is true if you try to do everything through geothermal. Same, like we will implode the world. The same thing is true if you do it all through solar. The same thing is true if you do it
Sure.
through all of any one particular type outside of probably nuclear. It's the only one that you could probably do it all with nuclear
Maybe.
eventually once we have that dialed
Yeah.
in. But for the most part, we need all of the different sources to work together. And so it's like, how do we find the balance of using the right amounts in the right ways and be able to regenerate as much as we possibly can? That's my take on it as a generalization.
No, totally. That's 100% accurate. And one of the biggest impediments right now is our electric grid is one way. So
Hmm.
um, it's basically just like a light switch turned on constantly. You can't ever feed electricity back into the grid, which is a huge problem. And people have been talking about it for a while. It's nothing new. But
Hmm.
I think if we could just all get solar on our roofs and have a two-way grid, that would be lovely.
I
You
like
know.
I
Um,
like where your head's at, Matt. Maybe that'll be the next thing that you dive into here when you
oh God.
you get into it.
Very wise
Um,
as well.
yeah, right. This has been a lot of fun talking to you. I feel like we've covered a lot
Yeah.
of really interesting and fun topics, as well as very important ones for growing businesses. If people wanted to work with you or follow you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Only way is Twitter at the moment. Yeah, that's the only way.
Yeah, what's your handle?
So just Matt underscore Van Swol. So if you
Cool. And I'll
search
link
Matt
that
Van
in the
Swol,
show
you'll find
notes.
me.
Yep.
Thanks.
Matt, I really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to talk to us, share your knowledge, share your wisdom with us.
Thanks for having me on. Yeah. Thank you.
And everyone, thanks for tuning in. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thanks for listening to the Up Arrow podcast with William Harris. We'll see you again next time, and be sure to click subscribe to get future episodes.